So welcome to this afternoon's discussion on Stephen King's Creepshow. So, I think to set things up, and those on Zoom should be encouraged to put questions up in the chat room. There is a lot of psychopathology in every single one of the film shorts that is Creepshow. I think for purposes of our discussion today, let's have a consensus that we're going to primarily focus on the personality disorders chapter of the DSM. So despite there being an abundance of substance use as well as psychosis, largely because we just discussed that, and so as not to repeat ourselves, the primary focus of our analyzing Stephen King's Creepshow over the next 30 to 40 minutes will be on the personality disorders. All right, so we don't have to go in any certain order in terms of the film shorts, so consensus from the group, is there a particular short that you'd like to start with?
I guess start from the first one and then go down.
What do you got?
Yes. Oh, you want to play with it?
What do you got?
Yeah, so when it came to like the daughter of the I guess patriarch, you can say, I noticed that like even though that's what they said, that she didn't actually kill my father. It was like she thought of it, but like her father killed her, like I think husband or boyfriend it was, that she was going to get married to, like have a good life with him. And it was just like interesting that it was not her, but it was like I don't even know who, the aunt who killed it, but the daughter kind of had that vision of being like a grand, like the main, I guess, matriarch of the family, and like take off the patriarch, and she didn't kill him.
Mm-hmm. I think your observation, and I think this short in particular, in the context of personality disorder, kind of refocuses on personality development. All right, so I think it sits really well here. And let's just talk a little bit about what you just mentioned. We have an adult character, we have an adult patient, who is demonstrating these beliefs, these thoughts, and these behaviors. She clearly is struggling with what happened, and this may or may not be 100% the result of what happened to her boyfriend, but probably more accurately complicated by then what happened to her father. Mm-hmm. And more specifically, that she has this thought, this impulse, that although she doesn't act on it, results in the same outcome. Mm-hmm. And she's feeling guilt and remorse over that when, as she stated, she had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's probably also like even worse because she had that kind of delusion of killing, and then it kind of came to life, so it, like she felt even more like she probably like kind of made it come to life.
Right.
Yeah.
So
bereavement, how do you say?
Bereavement, yeah.
Because we talked about that, I know, like last week with Friday the 13th, with Jason's mom. Could it be like the same, similar?
It could. I mean, a bereavement is definitely in play here, and to the extent that it's clinically significant, more likely persisting complex bereavement disorder. So again, bereavement, i.e. grief, is a normal reaction, is a culturally sanctioned reaction. This is beyond that. Mm-hmm. So we're going to look at a diagnosis with greater severity, and that conversation starts with persisting complex bereavement disorder. Mouthful, but we'll call it complicated bereavement. Yeah. That could certainly be in play here. In addition to the mood disorder, there's something going on personality-wise as well. Again, we all discussed, we all agreed that we're not going to talk about delusions, but she had this impulse, which, again, in as much as unconscious impulses go, is not normal, but certainly natural. Patricide. She does not act on the impulse. Dad dies anyway, and her reaction is what we're observing, and it's profound guilt, it's despondence, if not depression. Why? Where would this be deemed developmentally appropriate? That response. in a child. In a child, right? Children have these fantasies sometimes of Kevin, home alone, being alone. We're a family, we're gone. And then sometimes parents die, and children suffer, even though they had no control over that. The child doesn't understand that because they are egocentric, and that is normal. That is developmentally appropriate. Right? Now, with one's shedding egocentricity or egocentrism and gaining empathy, we see that go away, where people at some point realize it wasn't my fault, but not for a child. So I think when it comes to personality development, we can look at this character, and if we had her in front of us, hypothetically, we'd get at early childhood development and why, quote unquote, she's behaving like a child. Why is it that she's cognitively there and not at her chronological age when it comes to that guilt of having caused her father's death? Right? Now that assumes she's telling us the truth, of course. Thoughts?
If she's mentally a child or acting like that, maybe some sort of traumatic event. I don't want to bring, I mean, I don't know, but if something sexually traumatic happened.
Trauma in childhood could definitely contribute to this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And certainly the alcohol use can perpetuate it too. Remember, when we talk about human behavior, what predisposes to, what precipitates, and then what perpetuates. And we see the perpetuating factor here, biological perpetuating factor of alcohol use too. So, I just think for the first clip, the first short, while we might not cleanly land on a cluster of personality disorders or a specific personality disorder, we get at the etiology of personality in general, right? And that's temperament when we're young, how that temperament is reinforced versus punished, and we really begin to develop our own personalities. So it's more of the etiology of the personality than it is personality disorder. And it's largely because of the way she acts to her father's death when she didn't or had no role in the cause of death. What else?
It might be a shot in the dark, but I know that like wasn't there scenes throughout that specific like clip that where it was like it'd be like a lot of colors, something like that. Like it'd be like a shock. Or am I wrong? Like there would
I
be.
think so, yeah.
Or there would be like right before someone would die, there'd be like a huge.
Yeah,
could you say that like maybe that could be like LSD induced, being that like LSD does cause typically a lot of like flashing lights and flashing colors.
I can see the symbolism. I can definitely see the symbolism there.
I was trying to pull something.
Yeah, no, well, I think, whatever we're talking about, whether we were talking about psychosis, whether we're talking about a mood disorder, bereavement, complicated bereavement, and even personality, we always have to investigate the potential role of substances. And even though alcohol is literally written into this script, we have taken significant creative liberty in the past at looking at the symbolism. Yeah.
And maybe if she's like underdeveloped as like a child, like she has like the mind of a child in the sense of the bereavement. Like I know like in like action films, like there's like a lot of like colors, a lot of lights and this and that. Maybe she's, I don't know, somehow representing that, as a child, she has like the mind of a child with like these like flashing lights. Like I think of like the Batman movies where like it's like pow and like that. That's, you know what I mean?
No, well, not Batman movies and Batman TV show.
TV show.
I'm dating myself, but
Yeah.
yes. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yep. And again, I think people who want to remain much more objective, want to be the anchor to this, will remind us that this is in fact a comic book. It is a graphic novel. That said, why wouldn't that be in the same discussion? Our passion for these comics start in childhood usually. Not to say that we lose it during adulthood, far from it, but that passion usually begins with our earlier childhood experiences too. So there's a parallel there as well. All right, second clip. What do we got? This is Jordy, right?
Yeah.
Well, describe Jordy to me. I mean, if he were here and if he just left the room following completion of a 1-hour psychiatric assessment, I'm going to ask you the same question. What'd you think? How would you describe him? Remember we talked about the mental status exam? ABC stamp liquor. A stands for A and B. Appearance, behavior. That's all I'm asking. Describe him.
I mean, I guess, well, from I guess like a substance standpoint, you could say that he has like severe alcohol syndrome, because only like when he like chugs the whole like bottle of vodka, like he finally feels calm, and like before that he's like panicking. He sees all this like I don't even know what it is, the green stuff, whatever's growing out of him. And then I guess maybe like
I'm sorry. Do we know what's vodka?
Yeah,
Some
vodka.
type
Yeah,
of
vodka,
some type of
orange
vodka.
juice.
And then I guess maybe like him waking up in like this green, like completely covered, could be like a hangover, like how bad a hangover could feel, you know.
Our discussion must begin with the substance and therefore potential substance induced, because our clinical decision tree is going to start there. What else? And I want to pivot this to the personality disorders. I do want this didactic to be about personality disorders, which whatever personality disorder we would consider must be considered within the context of substance use. Similar to psychosis, depression / mood, bipolar and related disorders, so too must we consider the role of substances, especially the ideological role of substances in the personality disorders as well. So starting the conversation off where you went is clinically accurate.
Well, like him wise, he seems like a loner. He's just alone. He doesn't really seem like he interacts with like society.
Yeah. So this starts off really being about the schizoid personality, right? So the schizoid personality is a cluster A personality disorder. The DSM, the American Psychiatric Association, classifies the personality disorders in 3 groups. And because within a group, the conditions tend to have significant overlap, they're referred to as clusters. One condition within the first cluster, or cluster A, is the schizoid personality, which is defined as someone who is emotionally and sometimes physically isolated. They feel socially awkward, and they tend to be loners. And all of this is congruent, meaning that this is their wish, this is their desire. They really don't have any conflict or distress with regard to their social isolation. All right. And that certainly is a picture painted here. Now, we get into the clustering of this because there's a related condition, also a cluster A personality disorder, called the schizotypal personality, which overlaps in that individuals with this condition are also socially isolated, emotionally detached, but in addition have some eccentricity or bizarreness of behavior, and might the experience with that meteor be evidence of that eccentricity. Right, so I don't know if that would move me off of schizoid personality necessarily. It might. We need to know more. But at the very least, this particular film short demonstrates the clustering within that group of conditions, the final which includes the paranoid personality. And there's an element of paranoia here too. Right? The paranoid personality, the final condition within the same cluster, that is cluster A, is defined by the hallmark quality of a pervasive distrust or suspiciousness of others. So I think the film short of Jody Verrill introduces the cluster A personality disorders quite nicely. Number 3.
Did we discuss like an antisocial?
In who?
And
Joy.
Oh, was his name Jordy?
This was not.
No,
This was the
the
third
other-
short.
Yeah.
Forgot his name.
Oh, the
10 hands.
The older
No, it's not
man.
10 days.
Yeah, we'll go with that
The
one.
older man.
Yeah.
The older gentleman, yeah. Leslie,
Richard Vickers?
Richard, yes, that's Leslie Nielsen's character, right? Okay. So, Richard's character does in fact demonstrate a blatant disregard for and violation of others' rights. That includes his wife, that includes his wife's friend, to the extent that he kills them. I don't think there's any argument that he has that cardinal feature of the antisocial personality. Now, there is something that we would need to address here, and that is that there's evidence of conduct disorder prior to the age of 15. Because if the individual does not have evidence of conduct disorder, they are not going to be diagnosed with that antisocial personality disorder. They certainly have antisocial traits. There's no getting by the fact that he's got the cardinal trait. Whether that cardinal trait allows us to begin to rule in the actual disorder, the actual mental illness, has everything to do with his demonstrating conduct prior to the age of 15. All right. So we'd have to write the prequel. In that prequel, we would definitely want some aspect of animal cruelty, destruction of property, like fire setting, oppositional and defiant behavior towards adults and rules, all of which would suggest the evidence of conduct disorder.
Are there other Creepshow movies like this, like where it's like multiple? Are there other ones too? No.
And there's a show, right?
Oh, there's a show.
I thought I saw other pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I looked it up on like
Oh, you mean the sequel?
when I looked up on my Flickr, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, the sequel's similar. Similar in layout. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got
Okay.
the same structure.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it.
What?
I
wouldn't recommend?
Despite the fact that one of our former residents starred in it.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. I'd point you to his. We'll get into that offline, but sure, watch his segment. But beyond that,
Okay.
tread lightly.
All right, I'll tread lightly.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what other conditions may cluster with, that is, have these overlapping symptoms with antisocial personality disorder. One condition is called borderline personality disorder. Unlike every other condition we've named, even the three from the cluster A or the first cluster, this is one condition, borderline personality, that does not have a cardinal feature. So it's a little bit more difficult to kind of corral in because the previous four allow us to state that cardinal trait, and then the details off of that trait, which are the clinical criteria, the defining criteria, but also they're just examples of the main trait. We can't do that here. So there's a little bit more discussion to have for the borderline personality. And I think one of the ways that we can best address this, especially through a teaching didactic, is to get at the characteristic defense mechanisms that are associated with this condition. Anybody know what defense mechanisms characteristically underlie the signs and symptoms, the behaviors that define borderline personality disorder? So one is called splitting. Right, splitting. Splitting is all or nothing thinking. Individual who splits, that's an unconscious ego process. Somebody who splits always operates in the black or the white. Either it's right or wrong. They have very difficulty with what is referred to as ambivalence. That is, everybody and everything has both positive and negative qualities at the same time. It's very difficult for someone who is a splitter to really appreciate. Because of that, they often have all or nothing feeling, and therefore, attached to that, all or nothing behaviors. So mood lability.
So can you say bipolar?
We would, and I'm going to give you a reason why in a second. The other term, though, which is non-bipolar but definitely conforms to the definition, and therefore the diagnosis of borderline, is affective instability. Right? So mood swings, right? All or nothing thinking. Mood swings are just that. It's affective instability, rapid mood swings. Bipolar, on the other hand, and now we're talking about not mood swing, but mood polarity, as a sustained number of weeks to months of one pole, mania or depression, that differentiates from a premorbid baseline such as euthymia. On average, 3 or 4 months for mania, 6 or so months for depression, after which they might go to the opposite pole or a euthymic state. That's not mood lability. Okay? Mood lability are mood swings. And so there's more to it, but I think for our purposes today, the conversation definitely starts there. Mood lability versus mood polarity. Mood polarity, sustained, albeit abnormal episodes, versus affective instability within a given day. What other? Yeah, sorry. You can see there.
So yeah. So borderline, would you like say like, so you said like mood swings instead of like mood like polarity. Would that be like in a week or like in a day?
In a day.
A day, okay.
In a day. I mean, it could go a week too.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, depending on how much stress there is.
Mm-hmm.
Another defense mechanism, passive aggression, defined as the inward turning of a nihilistic impulse. So it's a negative impulse. We talked about the character in the first segment. I wish Dad were dead. I want to kill Dad. That impulse turned inward can lead to a suicide attempt or a suicidal gesture. So there is a criterion, suicide attempt or suicidal gesture, defining a borderline personality that is thought to be the direct result of passive aggression, the inward turning of a nihilistic impulse. Another common defense is dissociation, right, an altered mood state. And that's actually in the definition. The D word is actually part of the definition too. So the defense mechanism is a defining variable or criterion. Okay. So we'll leave it there for borderline personality. It's a little bit more difficult to remember the signs and symptoms because they really don't conform or adhere to a single cardinal trait, but it is good practice to remember the characteristic defenses, and they do link specifically to 3 separate clinical criteria. Narcissistic personality disorder. The individual who believes they are special, they're arrogant.
Could you say like I'm like recording all these things and like making it like a this is like it's a big deal. Like he has like all those TVs in his house and like
That might be suggested. I need to know more.
Yeah.
I need to know. And now I'll get offline. We'll get to why. Remind me though. Right? But the idea that they're special and they could only be understood by somebody as special as they are, and whether it's explicitly stated or inferred, it's not you. Right? So that's the arrogant, the haughty individual who believes they're special. That's the narcissist. And then you can look at the clinical criteria, and they're just examples of that cardinal feature. The fourth and final condition is the histrionic personality, the individual who must be the center of attention. That's the cardinal feature. They must be, and they also tolerate not being the center of attention with great difficulty. Right? So much so that they'll usually do something to ensure that they become the center of attention. So that is the cardinal feature there. So the case of Richard Vickers, I think, is most consistent with antisocial personality, and because of that, it does open up the discussion to the cluster B personalities, including borderline, narcissistic, and then finally histrionic personality disorder. Number 4.
I think the wife has like histrionic personality disorder in that one too, because she's trying to be like very loud at that party, and you notice everyone else is wearing like professional and like gray, like monotone clothes, and she's like bright and like little kind of like wacky clothes.
And if this came to clinical attention, if along with that there was clinically significant distress or impairment resulting in her needing to make an appointment with you, yes, provisional diagnosis, that's number 1. 1B, though, would be what? What does the clinician always have to consider when they actually think of any provisional diagnosis? Yeah. Yeah. Every time she's doing that, she's drunk.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if she has a personality disorder.
What was
Plenty of drunk loud friends.
what was the thing with the Billy nickname? Like, was that anything? 'Cause her name was Wilma or something.
Yeah.
And she's like, but you can just call me Billy, like to everyone. Like, was it just because she was drunk?
Oh yeah,
Nothing to it. Nothing.
yeah. You know, I would attribute everything to her intoxication until proven otherwise, right? We have to be very careful, and not for the movie, of course, because we could take as much liberty as we want with movies because they're fiction. But in real life, we clinicians have to be very careful of attributing a mental disorder, and I think even more importantly, personality variables to people under the influence. Right. So we're talking about the crate. What else here? Unfortunately, this is when it's really difficult for me because the cluster C personalities, I think, are much better related to the fifth and final short. So the crate's kind of a misnomer for me. It's kind of just sits there. I almost wish the crate were the fifth, and we could align 2, 3, and 4 to be A, B, and C. That would have worked out much better. At least from this obsessive compulsive mind in terms of putting something that's coherent.
Sorry. I was also thinking, like, while we're in there, like dual psychosis, maybe, for both of them.
Welcome to any horror movie ever produced in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Yeah. Yep. Anything else with the crate? All right, so the cool, again, another reason why it fits much better, and we have to call Stephen King up, or George A. Romero, maybe they just alter the movie for us in new streaming services.
Yeah.
Because the crate links quite nicely to what we're going to talk about next week. So for the Twitter group, we'll be posting The Thing. That's 1982, right? Not the remake. It is a remake.
Do we ever watch remakes of anything? No.
Or sequels.
Strictly just
Sequels I could bend a little bit on, a little bit. I'm trying to think. Well, I mean, officially, 82 is a remake of the Thing from Another World.
Okay.
So if you want to be technical, sure.
Yeah. All right.
Number 5. Finishing up our conversation this afternoon on Stephen King's Creepshow. Number 5. They're crawling up on you?
Yeah. Narcissistic personality disorder for sure.
I think the conversation starts there. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. All right. For purposes of introducing the cluster C personalities, now the final cluster in the chapter, we're looking at a condition where an individual is a perfectionist. Okay, there's an incredible attention to detail. They're the Type A personality. Everything's got to be perfect, organized, in control. That's the obsessive compulsive personality, and that's our main character here. Related to OCPD is a condition called dependent personality, also cluster C. The individual dependent personality requires affirmation or reassurance for their every next step. And then again, all the clinical criteria follow that cardinal feature. The final personality disorder in the cluster is avoidant personality, which is exactly what it sounds like. People avoid. They avoid other people. They could avoid places, and they could even avoid things like thoughts and feelings. And again, every clinical criteria conforms to that cardinal trait. And those are the 3 that form the final cluster, cluster C, the DSM. Any other thoughts about any of the 5 stories that we discussed over the past 2 hours?
I know we want it to line up perfectly with the A, B, and C, but in the last one, because he has such a disregard for the fact that he had that guy, he killed himself because of the shares or whatever, and the wife would be calling him and saying are you not at all upset about what you've done? I feel like that doesn't really align with any of the cluster C personalities perfectly.
Yeah.
It's a little scattered.
No, you're definitely right, and I think what you just said refocuses on how we go about case formulation, and that is once we talk about a symptom set, and we begin to focus on what conditions can explain that symptom set. We then ask ourselves a final question of are all the behaviors we observe now explained away? And the answer is no. And when we have a no answer there, we have more work to do, and that's called formulating a differential diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that includes secondary diagnoses. And I think if you kept true to that kind of flow chart, that algorithm, you'll avoid the potential of overdiagnosis. Right? So, because of course, if the answer were yes, you stop. No matter how much we want to diagnose more, we don't. Right? We don't overdiagnose, and that's the progression of thought, the progression of case formulation, given what you just said, getting to that final piece, asking, is everything explained away or not? Yes, we're done. But no, it does require us to think about this more, and it does seem that further thought would put us right back into cluster B. Final thoughts? All right, we'll leave it here. It will be The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing, 1982. Next week, and it is. We'll post it on Twitter, but the non-fat yogurt will be our Seinfeld episode.
Oh.
That's like what?
Yeah, that's also a little known movie from John Carpenter as well. Not really. Not really. Thank you guys.
What was the